Test, test, test. Everything just fell off. Test, test, test. Good morning, and welcome to worship on this week of January 23rd. I'm Reverend Philip Newman, and I'm just back having enjoyed some time away, just some family time, and catching up on some vacation, and just so glad to be back here where the weather has been rather balmy, and I'm being reminded of areas that I grew up in that are bitterly cold and up to here in snow, and I just have to say I'm not missing that, Jill. And we're aware that there may be some technical difficulties being experienced by folks online. We understand audio is working fine, but the images may not be, so there is some troubleshooting going on, and hopefully things will be able to come back into place. Meanwhile, we will continue. And welcome, Jillian. Good to have you with us today.
Thank you. It's good to have your such a relaxed presence. You know, I'm disappointed that people online are not seeing that pink wig you're wearing.
I know, I've been waiting forever to try it on, and I'm hoping that it's being well enjoyed, yes.
If you are watching online or listening online, your host on Facebook today is Mimi, and I'm sure she will connect you all, and we care for you all deeply. You're all our friends, and though you can't be with us in person, we hold you in this space, and so welcome this morning.
And Jillian, I really appreciate your being here because you were not initially scheduled to have leadership and worship today. But as Simon and I chatted this week, and Simon was moving through the week with a house that had a lot of positive COVID within it, we thought just out of an abundance of caution, it'd be best that he not be here. So he's been working at home this week, and we just continue to hold his family in prayer, and things have been fairly light and modest in their experience of COVID, and we trust that it's swiftly behind them. Meanwhile, whether you can see or hear only, what we want to do is just give thanks that we are able to gather on this traditional unceded territory of Coast Salish people, and the Squamish, the Musqueam, the Tsleil-Waututh people have been the traditional custodians of these lands, and we are privileged to be able to be gathered here. Jillian, I'm aware that the time in which the world is moving through pandemic and restrictions and life not being normal can take its toll on people. And we have been encouraging folks, well, we hope always, but certainly in these times when folks feel weary and fatigued about every variant that comes along, and now Omicron, that we have an eye that looks out for one another. Stephen Ministry is one of the ministries that the congregation has, caring ministries where people connect with people. Simon, myself, I know you're willing at any time to have prayer with folks that are just looking for some support, just looking for a word, maybe a word that is just calming and grounding when we feel like we're at the end of our rope. And we know from all our conversations that there comes a time for most people when they feel they've gone as far as they can and they don't know what they're going to do, how even they're going to take their next breath.
I think this fourth wave has really been one of a real weary journey. And so even taking care of yourself is the first most important bucket to fill. And so out of that space, just let it flow. If you're feeling flat, reach out. Go and buy yourself some flowers or something to pick you up, and then reach out, because you don't need to walk this sort of long journey on your own. We are a family, and we're here for you.
Mm-hmm. And that we are family, and that's not just for those that live in our local communities, but our family online is very much family. And so by phone, by email, by texting, we are accustomed to making all of those connections, and we just, again, offer that invitation for folks. We are glad that you're part of our congregation, Jillian, and you have been, as we were chatting just before worship started about how long that might have been, but it's been most of a decade now, and I know you acknowledge that those years just fly by. And we're grateful for that caring and grounded presence that you bring into this faith family. And because we're so glad, we would just love for you to light the Christ candle for us this morning. Just a light that shares the caring, the love, the restoration that our God longs for everyone. And friends, I invite us to join together in our call to worship this morning. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Come before your God with praise and thanksgiving.
The joy of God is our strength.
Proclaim in heaven and earth the goodness of our God.
Come,
let us worship God who revives our soul.
Let's take a moment now. You have something?
I'm just letting folks know that our system is advanced enough that it is able to archive, and so we expect full video to be available. After this worship concludes, it will be all put together and available for everyone who would like to have the whole experience online. Maybe you could pray for that.
All right, let's take a moment to enter into a space of worship. Yes. So I invite you to close your eyes if you like. Take a deep breath. And just allow God's goodness to sink deep into your soul. God's abundant presence that is available to you now and always. Holy Spirit, there are people with us who are longing for your comfort. There are people among us who are longing for your peace, for your healing. And there are some among us who are longing for you to witness their joy. But all of us are longing for your loving presence. Holy Spirit, come and be with us as we worship you this morning. Amen.
Good morning. My name is Catherine Alban, and my family and I joined this church when we moved to West Vancouver in 1968. That's a long time ago, and during all those years, this church has been a wonderful support and presence in our lives. Will you join me for prayer for God's mission? O Lord, we, your people, come before you this morning with gratitude and praise. Gratitude that we are a part of this church that has worked so hard to keep us connected during this pandemic. Gratitude that people have given so generously of their time and talents and offer to us opportunities to worship, to be together safely in workshops, and to continue our work in the community. Help us all to be aware of how we may help one another through these troubled times. Give us patience with others and with ourselves as we live with our restrictions and our necessarily limited contacts. Remind us that we can reflect hope, that we can reach out to others to brighten lives or offer a listening ear. On this third Sunday of Epiphany, we praise you, God, for our celebration of Christmas, the gift of Christ into our world. But with celebrations over, we are anxious and worried. The Magi are on their way home. The shepherds are back with their flocks, and Mary, Joseph, and Jesus are faced with King Herod looking for infant boys. But you, God, lead them to safety. We ask that you be with us as you were with them on their road to Egypt. We think of all the frontline workers in our health system, our educational system, and workers who in their jobs must constantly meet the public. We think of all the businesses and cultural groups who face economic hardship and uncertainty for the future. And we think of the many third world countries who are struggling to find adequate COVID supplies, vaccines, and health care for their populations. We ask your blessing for them and to give them wisdom to find creative ways of managing their limited resources, and that the world recognizes them and acts to assist them. Today, in this week dedicated to prayers for Christian unity, we add our prayers to others around the world. May we find more in common with other denominations so we cooperate as one large Christian family, spreading Christ's two great commandments in the world, to love you, God, and to love our neighbors wherever they may be. We pray for world leaders facing the many crises of conflict, hunger, drought, natural disasters, and under all else, the pandemic. Give them wisdom, compassion, and a wider vision of the future so their decisions will benefit all. We pray especially for a de-escalation of the tensions between Russia and the Ukraine, and ask you guide the negotiators to find a peaceful settlement. We ask for your special blessing for all those who are facing difficulties in their lives. This morning, we pray especially for Ted, that he might find comfort and support as he transitions to long-term care. And for Joshua, as he negotiates stage 4 cancer and undergoes chemotherapy treatment. And we offer prayers for others known to us that we name in silence. May they all be assured of your presence. We are entering a special period in our church life, Lord. As we face change, we ask you to be with us all, congregation, board, and staff, as we consider options and make decisions for the future. Help us always to remember that we are here to represent you and do your work in this community. We ask these things as we pray the prayer that Jesus taught us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Good morning. It is a good morning. Good morning to you who are listening on your computers or cell phones, and good morning to you in the congregation, and good morning, choir and ministers. My name is John Pearson. I haven't been here as long as Catherine Alban, I'm afraid. My wife and I came here in 1972, so we're in our 50th year. I've served on the worship committee and the official board. I helped with the musicals in the days of musicals. And right now I'm working in the Treasure Trove gift shop. And if you haven't been there yet, I urge you to go and tell your friends and neighbors. As we prepare to hear God's word, let us pray. God, whom we know through the Scriptures, speak to us through these words. Show us the wisdom and joy of your ways, that we may know what is good and do what is right. Through Jesus Christ, your word. Amen. A reading from the Gospel of Luke. Then Jesus, filled with the power of the Spirit, returned to Galilee, and a report about him spread throughout all the surrounding country. He began to teach in their synagogues and was praised by everyone. When he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, he went to the synagogue on the Sabbath day, as was his custom. He stood up to read, and the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was given to him. He unrolled the scroll and found the place where it was written, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." And he rolled up the scroll, gave it back to the attendant, and sat down. And the eyes of all in the synagogue were fixed on him. Then he began to say to them, "Today this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing." Hear what the Spirit is saying to the church. Thanks be to God.
Simon and I do a lot of kidding of one another that whenever it is that I go away and he's here preaching, there's a technical glitch with our system. And today is just to prove that that's not always necessarily true. So I hope Simon at home feels relaxed and just good that it comes everyone's direction sooner or later. Miss you, Simon. Let's pray. Oh Lord, may I never lightly presume to speak your word, nor may we ever lightly presume to hear your word, for in your word is life, abundant life. Amen. Though not quite the same experiences, just as everyone remembers their first kiss, so preachers remember their first sermons. And in both cases, it's usually a bittersweet memory. The feeling electric, the technique maybe hesitant, maybe a little sloppy. As I recall, it wasn't quite a sermon. I'll describe it, not the first kiss. It was more of a brief message, really, in my home church where I grew up, and it was well before I had experienced my first kiss, which is kind of pathetic, actually. But by the time I preached my first real, full-length, thought-out sermon, the message itself, in hindsight, was very sloppy. It was too rambling, too superficial, too disjointed, not too long, a lot of sound and fury, but not much focus, really. And by professional homiletic standards, my first sermon was pretty poor, but you know, I didn't know that at the time. And neither did the congregation, or if they did. And I am darn sure they did know. You know, they never let on to me. After the service, they all came by, shook my hand, and God bless them, offered the most gracious comments. Oh, the next Billy Graham could be right here in our own little church. You just got to love those caring, supportive home congregations that nurture you and hold you through so many mistakes and just care for you and pray for you nonetheless. Now, the response to Jesus' first sermon in Luke's gospel, how it was delivered in his home synagogue in Nazareth, it didn't turn out so well. Jesus began his public ministry. He was about age 30, twice as old as I was. Makes you stop and think. As was his custom, he comes to the local synagogue on the Sabbath. Only this day it's his turn to read the scripture lesson and to provide commentary on it. Now, the Gospels of Matthew and Mark, they report a similar episode, but Luke, he greatly expands upon it and sets it as the opening act of Jesus' mission. It's thus is his primary programmatic scene for how Jesus will play out in his story. And it's painted with vivid detail. Notice the order of service. Jesus stands up from the congregation. The synagogue attendant hands him a scroll of the prophet Isaiah, and Jesus unrolls the scroll and locates the day's text. And then he reads aloud. And here, that's where I'd really love some more detail. I'd love to know the pitch, the volume by which he read, the cadence, how it might have flowed or not, the inflection that Jesus might have used. But Luke doesn't give us any of that. And of course, we don't have a recording, maybe like today. After reading Jesus, he re-rolls up those scrolls and returns it to the attendant. And then he sits down, but not because he's through, but because that's the customary posture of teaching, unlike the way we tend to stand. The drama intensifies as the eyes of all in the synagogue are fixed on him. Everyone's filled with anticipation. They're locked in. They're tuned in to what Jesus is going to say about the text. And I want to hold this tension a while. And I don't want to wade too far into the response of the congregation to Jesus preaching because, well, I suspect Simon will explore that next week where he picks up where this Luke passage ends. But just let me acknowledge that in the very next verse, beyond what John shared with us this morning, we read that all spoke well of him. And they were amazed at the gracious words that came from his mouth while buzzing to one another. Is this not Joseph's son? Joseph? This is Joseph's little boy. Though such responses may seem favorable, they're not altogether clear-cut. They heard his sermon. They begin to talk about it, evaluate it likely, but did that mean they approved of it? And as far as being amazed at Jesus' words, well, that can cut two ways. Either, wow, we've never heard anything like this before. That's wonderful and exciting. Or, whoa, we've never heard anything like that before. That's strange and disturbing. Is this not Joseph's son? That can also cut two ways. Either, wow, how about that Joseph's boy? Isn't he something? Chip off the old block, Nazareth's favorite son. We're so proud. Or, whoa, this is Joseph's kid, for goodness sakes. A local laborer, just like us. Where does he get off with all these highfalutin claims? Who does he think he is? Is it wow or whoa? And probably a bit of both. The stunned congregation doesn't quite know what to make of this new Jesus of Nazareth, this son of Joseph. And of course, we are meant to be a little more clued in as readers of the gospel story, readers of the record all these centuries later. Remember, we've just come through the Christmas story. Remember that? And the opening chapters of Luke, they figure pretty big as we move through the Christmas season. They disclose that, in fact, Jesus is not exactly Joseph's boy, but rather God's son in human flesh, conceived by God's Spirit in Mary's womb. However, all of that might have happened. That's the thrust of the story. But we don't know who all knows this within that Nazareth community, except Mary and Joseph, and even they don't grasp the whole picture. Mary in particular does a lot of pondering about this unusual son of hers. This is understandably hard to take in. Is this not Joseph's son? We're meant to know that, well, no, it really isn't. It's God's son who's becoming one of us, coming as close as you can get to us. Amazing in every sense of the word, astounding and perplexing, marvelous and mysterious. We might cut the Nazareth folk some slack for not grasping all of this from the get-go. I mean, we might also reclaim for ourselves some of the shocking awe of this incarnate Christ. And I won't explore this any further other than to say Jesus preaches, and there is an eruption in the congregation, and Jesus never returns to Nazareth again. Right after reading this Isaiah text, Jesus flatly announces, "Today the scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing." And that may not immediately seem to be provocative words, but the announcement, it packs a wallop, really. Jesus is making an audacious personal claim. Right now, folks, today, what I just read from the prophet Isaiah, that's being fulfilled in your midst. As you are gathered here, it's being fulfilled. In fact, it's being fulfilled in me. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has sent me to bring good news to the poor. He sent me to proclaim release to the captives and sight to the blind and liberation for the oppressed. You see, Jesus is appropriating the me of Isaiah's text for himself. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. I am the one anointed for this. Moreover, he declares this year, starting today, the year of the Lord's favor, it says. Now, he's most likely referring to what was thought of as the year of Jubilee. It was a banner year in the Jewish calendar, and it came about only once in every 50 years. And it was a year in which all debts were forgiven. It was a year in which all lands that had been seized or taken were restored back to its original holders. Imagine that one today. All slaves are set free. A year enacting God's infinite grace and mercy and justice. It's redemptive grace. It's restoring mercy. It's a justice that redistributes most everything. And my goodness, it's a radical agenda, if there ever was one. Jesus indeed makes an amazing announcement concerning himself, his mission, and his moment in the history of saving God's people. And I fear that over time, we've heard that so often that we become rather too comfortable with this revolutionary good news. But the first time Jesus' people heard the news, it had to be gobsmacking, mind-boggling. Jesus makes Scripture his own to a breathtaking degree. Scripture will not just inform his life or inspire him. It won't just enrich his life. It will be his life. He won't just read the book, study the book, proclaim the book. He will live the book. He sets the pattern for us to follow. And as disciples of Christ, we're called to walk as he walked, to live as he lived as best we can. And our text makes crystal clear that a big part of a Christ-following life involves bringing good news and liberating love to those bound by a legion of demons physically, psychologically, emotionally, economically, socially, politically, spiritually, liberating the whole person. The text of the scroll of Isaiah from which Jesus reads, well, it serves as a manifesto for his mission. It sets the agenda for his entire life and work. Just read the rest of the Gospel of Luke. Everything Jesus does, it fits this profile. You're probably aware of the familiar slogan, "What would Jesus do?" WWJD. It's been used and misused for years to support all sorts of modern agendas. What would Jesus drive? What would Jesus eat? What would Jesus tweet? I have no idea. If we want to know what Jesus would do and what we should do as his followers, we're our best advised to look at what Jesus did. He brought good news. He brought it to the poor. He brought release to the captives. He brought sight to the blind, freedom to the oppressed. And in our still very broken world, and my goodness, we are weary of living in a world that feels so constrained and broken and unusual. Wow, to do all that, that is plenty to keep us busy till Christ comes and restores all creation. And likewise, in our endless battles for the Bible, pushing some pet doctrine or quibbling over how to interpret it all, we do well to unite around what really matters, which is incarnating the book in our lives as Jesus did. In other words, breathing in the stories until they pulse in our DNA. For the sake of those who are bound up and beaten down. And again, I sure stress that that is not easy to do. The Nazareth folk, well, they were perplexed about what to do with this program trumpeted by Isaiah and now by Jesus. And rather than making it easier to handle, well, Jesus just ratchets up the tension. The good news of liberation is not just for us and ours, Jesus suggests. Not just for people who look and think like us, it's for everybody. As hard as the message is, some, though, have managed to sort out this anointing and in their own way have taken action. And I'd like to tell you about Esquimalt and Ashley. Esquimalt, his friends call him simply Ken, which sadly is a terribly anglicized version of his First Nation name. But that's what they call him. And Ken was once a junior kindergarten teacher. And while he grew up knowing his ancestral language, Anishinaabemowin, sadly, the children he taught did not. And one day, when he was watching YouTube videos, he saw superheroes in the videos and thought, now, why not make videos with superheroes that speak Anishinaabemowin? We know that when people are able to reclaim and to speak their ancestral language, that their self-understanding grows, their self-esteem grows, health even improves, as well as a sense of connection. And relationships with others flourish. And so, knowing how important learning Anishinaabemowin is to the children that he once taught, Ken partnered within the United Church, getting some funding to begin to film some videos. And when those videos are finished, they'll be used as an educational resource for teachers and parents and children and anyone who wants to learn their ancestral language. And Ashley Riley, she plays a starring role in those videos. And she describes the systemic oppression of Indigenous people in Canada that results in loss of language, among other things. Ashley's mother was a residential school survivor, and because she wasn't allowed to speak her language at school, Ashley and other young members of the family did not grow up knowing it. They forgot also how to practice their sacred ceremonies. And she's slowly beginning to learn again. She says a prayer every morning in her own language. And Ashley decided to participate in Ken's video project because she believes that each one of us has the power to make a difference. She says every single person is a spiritual superhero. That's her claim. Every single person has a gift to share with the world. And Ashley concludes, I think the most important thing is realizing the gift you can bring to your community. I think that's pretty powerful. And a simple way that they are doing it. Being people of the book, being disciples of Christ, we're anointed to be people with a vision of care and of justice for all. And somewhere in that grand vision, we all have a gift to offer. Not to make the world perfect, not to end all suffering, not to usher in some golden age of endless possibility and wonder once and for all, but through simple acts day by day, week by week, year by year, to bring good news. Sometimes that's to the poor, to help set free those who may be bound, to help people see themselves and others in new ways, and to let those who are oppressed rise up with new strength and hope, making today, each day, as Jesus says, a day of Jubilee somewhere and for someone who needs it. Amen.
Thank you for your wise words, Philip. One of the questions that you raised early in your sermon was, who does he think he is? And it's such a striking question because it's the question we ask when we want to put somebody down and to avoid having a relationship with them. And it's also a question that fits with the way that the world would want to understand Jesus. Who is he? Who is he historically? And it seems to me through the story of Ken is that if we accept that he is who he is, the question then gets flipped. Who does he say I am? Who does he think I am? So that's the thought direction I took from your sermon.
Well, and yes, I can't help asking myself that question when I hear that. And it's a question that gets repeated in different ways as the gospel story unfolds. It keeps coming back for an answer, or to let us sit with that question. Who is he? Who does he think he is? Who do we think he is? And therefore, you're right. Who does that say I am? And I'm always curious as a follower to know, therefore, what's the implication for me as a follower? And I like the implications to be simple. I like them to, but I know simple doesn't necessarily mean easy. And that's an exploration, I guess, for all of us. All those who hear the story, all those that wish to count the story as part of their story.
It's a costly, blessed love that we receive. So thank you. And thank you to all of you. Thank you for joining us. But thank you also for the givings that you give of your time and your finances and your presence to each other and to the world. Thank you. So let's gather up these blessings in prayer before we leave. Loving God, thank you for the opportunity to share our talents, our time, and our finances with those in need. This enriches our lives for the better. God, you are perfect wisdom. Take these gifts and bless them and share them with the world. In the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Friends, the Spirit of the Lord is upon you. Go into this amazing world, as complex and as hurting as it is, knowing that that Spirit travels with you, in you, around you, beneath you, above you. You are not alone. And as you move through the week, may you see the face of Christ in the people you meet. And may the people you meet see the face of Christ in you.